Yes, thank you, Heather. And good evening. It really is such a pleasure. We're going to turn the heat off in just a moment so that you'll be able to hear us even more clearly. And if you need us to be louder, just let us know. It's a very intimate and loving group, and I really am so excited to talk about this play with you. It is called A Profoundly Affectionate, Passionate Devotion to Someone, (noun) by Debbie Tucker Green. It really is the dictionary definition of love, and tonight when you watch the play, hold that in your mind and you'll see why. But I'm so excited to be talking to our artists tonight. In 3 years of working here, I've never once had a Tarragon Talk where I spoke with my own artistic director and boss, Mike Payette. So this will be a lovely conversation. And because in the lead up to Profoundly, we had many behind the scenes moments that I hope to mine up for you as behind the scenes nuggets for you, but also so glad to be speaking with Germaine. I printed out their bios because they're both such accomplished artists so that I can do great respect to the work that they've accomplished in their incredible adventures as artists. So to my left is Germaine Konji, a Kenyan-Canadian director, actor, singer, writer, composer, and educator. Born in Kenya and raised in Canada, their work is rooted in community and storytelling as a means of survival, resistance, and joy. A graduate of Sheridan College's Music Theatre Performance program, Germaine pushes against colonial frameworks, blending diasporic storytelling with contemporary performance. Most recently, and super hyped, Germaine directed Sex Goddess at Summerworks. That was such a lauded production. For the Summerworks Festival, like I just said, Obsidian's inaugural Black Queer Voices Spotlight, and as a performer, some of their credits include Universal Childcare at Canadian Stage, Grand Magic, and finally their son at the Stratford Festival, Dixon Road with Canadian Stage, Orphan Song here at Tarragon Theatre, and Into the Woods with Talk is Free Theatre. Germaine is a Dora-nominated artist, a 2020 Sid and Shirley Banks Prize recipient, and a Breakthrough Toronto Stage Artist of 2022. And over to Germaine's left is, without need of introduction, Tarragon Theatre's artistic director, Mike Payette. Born in Montreal, Mike Payette is an award-winning director, educator, and actor. I will just list some of the companies across the country and beyond that Mike has worked with. Too many shows that he's directed or acted in to list. The Arts Club in Vancouver, Canadian Stage, Soul Pepper, Punctuate Theatre, the Shaw Theatre, Citadel, Vertigo Theatre, Manitoba Theatre for Young People, Banff Centre, Artistic Fraud of Newfoundland, Seagull Centre, Centaur Theatre, The Grand, Factory Theatre, Neptune Theatre, the National Arts Centre, and of course here at home at Tarragon. Prior to starting his tenure here at Tarragon, Mike was the artistic and executive director of Geordie Theatre, based in Montreal, where he was also the founding member of Tableau, thank you so much, the founding artistic director of Tableau d'Hôte Theatre, and was also the assistant artistic director for Black Theatre Workshop, also based in Montreal. But today, I wanted to start this conversation about Profoundly in talking about the origin story of Mike. Where did you come to discover this play, and how did you come to program it here at the Tarragon with our partners, Obsidian Theatre?
Good evening, everyone. So this folks will know that Tarragon has a history of not solely doing new Canadian work. We've sort of doubled down on the mission of supporting Canadian playwrights and new Canadian work. But with Bill Glasgow, the founder of Tarragon, with Urgel Correda, with Richard Rose, there were many adaptations that had occurred, certainly in this building, and further, there were North American or Canadian premieres, but not necessarily world premieres. I was looking for a text that could celebrate the marriage and the love of words that Tarragon has, certainly as a company within its mission, that embraced artistic form or pushed the boundaries of how stories could be shared. And I was a real big fan of Debbie Tucker Green during my time in Montreal, had come across or had seen a production of Random, which is one of her earlier works. It's a solo show. Debbie Tucker Green is based in the UK, she's from London, and she speaks very uniquely in her writing to the community, to the intersectional communities that she lives in or she was raised in. Profoundly, the first time I read it, and full transparency, I have a partner who happens to also be in the show. I mentioned that, and I won't say who, you decide for yourselves. I mentioned that because I was actually introduced to the play by them. Because I was in search, and they were like, "Here, check this piece out," and I did. I read it, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with its complication. I fell in love with the thematic twists of love, or the deep investigation of love. And this was early on in my tenure, so this was about 3-ish years ago, 3.5 years ago. And we were already in a place, certainly in terms of our climate, post-pan world, where isolation was still very much a part of our everyday. And this piece really burst open the scope of what the heart can do and rekindled what I think, or what I continue to think, to be our relationships to ourselves and each other. And it's complicated. But more than anything, our mission, again, is in the celebration of words, as I said. And the way that DTG, Debbie Tucker Green, writes is almost like a musical score, that everything is conscious. Every decision, every punctuation or lack of punctuation is conscious. And as a center of new creation and dramaturgy at Tarragon Theatre, what better play that would open up the scope of international stories than this piece of work? And so I had actually asked Mumbi Tindieba Otu, who's the artistic director of Obsidian Theatre, and also the director of this piece. I had asked her 3 years ago if she wanted to direct it. And she ended up directing Post-Democracy, Hannah Moskovich's Post-Democracy, which was my first program season. And she was like, it's not really the time yet for her. And then last year, or a year and a half ago, she was like, remember that piece that you brought forward when you were early on? I think now I'm ready to investigate it. And there we have it. So it's sort of a combination of the love of my life mixed in with the love of language and the timing and the right people coming together that bring us to this moment.
Thank you, Mike. And Germaine, for you, what was your origin story in meeting this play? Was it the first day in rehearsal here, or did you have a process leading up to it in encountering the script?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. About a week out from the rehearsal process, I had a meeting with Mumbi about her vision for the piece, and got to really sit with the text and wrap my brain around what the designers had been cooking.
That's amazing. And what were some of the first impressions you had when you first read it?
Oh yeah. There was a lot to take in. I think Mike really hits the nail on the head with the specificity of the text. It is sparse on the page, it's quite a lot of white space when you look down. But then because of that, that means that everything that is there is so purposed. And I think Debbie Tucker Green is very specific with the information that she does provide and then the information that she doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I was really struck by, continuing to ask the question, what is really at the heart of each of these moments, beat to beat, using language that repeats, even within silences and pauses and interjections. What is the love at the core of language that at times feels divisive?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Germaine. One little fun tidbit I'd love to share about Debbie Tucker Green on her origin story as a playwright is she actually worked for a decade as a stage manager in British theatre. And a friend had secretly sent in one of her plays for a playwriting competition at the Royal Court Theatre in the UK. And through that, she was discovered. She didn't win the competition, she was a runner-up, but that led to a series of productions, and now she's one of the most celebrated playwrights in British contemporary British playwriting circles. And so that conversation of contemporary playwriting, as Mike alludes to, is something that is so fascinating. And as you listen tonight, it is quite just a little dialed away from what you might be used to when you listen to Canadian literature. And so I welcome you to also hold that in your mind. But bringing that in is the adventure of an artist, the journey of someone being a stage manager, stepping into becoming a playwright. I'm also curious for both of you. Germaine, you're a widely loved performer, and now you're also stepping into directing. You've already directed. And Mike, you also hold many hats that have led you to this moment. So for the both of you, how does your artistic adventures, how have they led you to this profound moment of where you are now?
You want to go first?
Sure. Folks will know that I did start out as an actor, when I was a kid, and maintained a very fortunate career until my early 30s. Before I, what's the one? Yeah, so in my early 30s or late 20s at some point, before I started committed fully to the career of artistic leadership. I think, I think the center of everything, basically my relationship to all of the disciplines shifted. As I continued a career, my relationship to stories shifted, my relationship to audience had shifted as well. But really it came down to what is my connection to storytelling, and where do I feel most gratified or helpful, I guess, in audience experiencing a wide scope of stories. And ultimately, I think regardless of the discipline, that is the sort of nucleus of any sort of choice or decision or path that I've been a part of, is like, how can I make a meaningful contribution to storytelling? How can I expose as many stories to as many audiences as possible? And that, I keep coming back to that. And I'm sure there'll be continued, investigation. I don't know where I'll be in 20 years from now. I don't know if I'll go back to acting. I don't know any of that right now. That's a hard question.
No,
it's a good one. I don't know.
It's perfect. Thank you, Mike. How about for you, Germaine?
I agree. I'm like, that is quite the question. Yes, I would say as a performer, a bit of acting technique is you're always focused on, or trying to focus on your scene partner and really investing outside of yourself. We're always saying out of the self and into the other. So I think this pivot creatively, you start to ask, to return inward to yourself, asking, what is the type of work that I might be interested in as a young person today? What do I have to say in terms of how we make the work that we make? Is there anything I'm interested in interrogating process-wise as well? So those are the questions that led me to pivoting around creative spaces and arriving here.
Thank you.
I think like also within the spheres of any discipline, we're in the arts and, well, in life really, but certainly within the arts, there's, depending on what your field of focus is or discipline of choice or whatever is guiding you in a particular moment, there is a degree of vulnerability, personal vulnerability, that comes into absolutely everything that is shared within the work. And so an actor's vulnerability is different than a director's vulnerability, which is different than a playwright's vulnerability, et cetera, et cetera. And I think when I think of the Venn diagram of when things were intersecting or things were very, very different or separate from one discipline to another, I think it's also my relationship to that level of vulnerability and how comfortable I was being up front or like visible, for an audience to experience the story versus launching the story and allowing the audience to, experience it and interpret it by virtue of the storytellers on stage. I didn't want to be that person anymore because it's scary. I don't know how you do it. Like I you know what I mean? I look at what the 5 actors are doing and they're bearing their souls. But Mumbi, as director, also is bearing her soul. But now she's resting. Like now she needs to take a little bit of a rest because of how much she's given. But that's her contribution. So I think depends on the time, depends on the piece itself.
100%. Thank you. And I apologize for the difficulty. It really was to talk about sort of the intersections that bring us to this moment, and how even for Debbie Tucker Green, she is bearing her soul in the writing. There is a degree of a visceral quality that you'll notice tonight when you listen to the play, and every artist that has had their fingerprints on this play from beginning to end in some sort of way is bearing their soul for you to witness. And then even for you, this moment that brings us all together right now in this room and then tonight in the theater, you too will be a part of that storytelling and part of that vulnerability, that invitation for you to resonate your own life and your own history with other people onto the play. You'll see what I mean very soon. But I wanted to go into the process a little bit now of being in the rehearsal room. How was it like for everyone to build the play together? What was it like for you?
Oh, yeah. In the room, we talked a lot about the chasm, this space that exists between us in relationship. What might get said or unsaid in the tension that exists in between. And that tension of knowing and not knowing was certainly the name of the game for the process as well. Because of the nature of the text, it took a lot of generosity from every person in the room, Mumbi as a director, every actor, stage management, each of the designers, each person coming to the table and really offering their heart as it relates to the piece, their own interpretation of the vision. So yeah, in terms of the scenes with the actors, we really, really explored the full extent of what each moment could be. And it was really the same design-wise through each part of the process.
Thank you, Germaine. Something unique about Tarragon Theatre is that we have a full week of previews, which is quite rare for a Canadian theatre company. And even though this is not a new Canadian play, as what Mike was explaining, and this being an international work from a few years ago, Mike, how did it grow for you in that 7 days of a preview? What did you observe as challenges or progressions in that process?
And I went to a few of them. I don't go to every one, but I went to a whole bunch this time. Many things grew. And while I talk about this, I'm actually going to share the hard copy of the script for you folks, just to get a sense of like what we're talking about when we talk about score and whatever. So it's a little bit of a show and tell. Don't read the whole thing, but I'm going to offer it to you to pass along if you'd like. Look at a couple of pages and you'll see what we mean in the context of this chat. There was a great amount of exploration, as Germaine alluded to, in rehearsal, because of how much or how little is in between the lines, and that scope of interpretation for the actors as well as the director to make the choices to allow there to be a consistent logic. Let's say a logic for the characters to know, or the actors to know what beats to hit, to make sure that they hit them, because if they don't, then it's actually going to derail an audience's understanding of a moment that might just be filled with the word I. And then a space, a space, a space. So repetition and continuity of solidifying those choices was really, really important from the preview period, and was hyper informed by the audience reaction to make sure that the artists knew what worked and what didn't. Where were the consistent places where audiences were reacting in a gasp, in a laugh, in a what have you, to assure the artists, okay, this is working, or this is not panning out in the way we had interpreted. It is a play that requires constant, I would say, for the actors to constantly, and stage manager, because the stage manager is breathing with them in terms of calling the cues. it does require, again, a consistency of running, right? And to think of it as a verbal choreography. It is a muscle. There's a great, I don't say this often, but a great note from a review that talked about it. We love reviews. Record it. It is about language. It's like a tongue choreography, basically, as well as it being physical. So over the course of the 7 days, it is getting used to that. It is making sure that the actors are hitting these beats. It's also clarifying what is the dance between design and the actors. When do we want to, or how is lighting going to affect or steer an audience's understanding of a moment from one time frame to another? So I was really, really chuffed to be in that room over the course of the 7 days. Germaine was there every single day, constant note sessions, and Mumbi was really, really receptive to notes from everybody. Yeah. And Germaine was really at the heart of that. And it was a real gift to see, the evolution, because it was very, very clear. It got tighter, got funnier, it got harder, got sadder. It really, really soared by opening night.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add around the preview process specifically, sort of the progression of that in front of an audience?
Yeah, definitely. I think what became clear for the actors is with a piece like this, you almost have to be going thought for thought with your scene partner, and that's certainly extended to stage management, as you'll see tonight with the pacing of it, for Alice to be able to call the show in time with the actors. It really, really required a lot of work in parsing out the exact clarity of the moment. And certainly as someone who comes from a background of music theater, the layer of the body as movement, the body as text, that was another layer that we were really, really refining within the preview process as well. The way that the physical body plays in a house the size of a theater versus the rehearsal hall is different. So all of these tweaks and shifts need to come together, sometimes within a transition that's a half a second long, in order for a moment to land. So yeah, it was a lot of attention to detail and prioritizing clarity.
Thank you. I wanted to return to, thank you for that beautiful segue around your background in music theater. Germaine has done a number of shows recently of texts and plays that interrogate communication and language. Previously, you had just worked on Normandy Girl and the Earthquake in Her Lungs at Nightwood, is that correct?
Yes, I faintly shadowed the process, but yes.
I think on that, because that play was also a play that really unpacked language and unpacked language as music. And then the last time you were here at Tarragon with Orphan Song, that was a play, if anyone remembers, by Sean Dixon, directed by Richard Rose, was a play almost without language. It was pre-language. Could you talk a little bit about your own fascination with projects that examine communication or language as music? Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. So my relationship with communication is, of course, a bit multidisciplinary, coming from the music theater background. But then also, as a first-generation Canadian myself, I watched my parents experience the limitations of language as the sole tool to communicate in their journey coming here to this country. And both of them are very, very fluent in English. They use better grammar than me. But in terms of how we understand each other, how we relate to each other as people, I grew up observing what can get lost in translation in the space in between when we rely on only text. And that's why the body as movement, song as storytelling, these are tools that before they were professions for me or elements that I engaged with artistically, they were really survival mechanisms for my family. So that's my background in interrogating the utility of language, what we say, what we don't, how we do, how we don't. Yes, and then certainly in the music world, when it comes to composition, you're really, really attuned to rhythm, and especially as someone with a decolonial background, particularly how we play silence as tension. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that. A fun little tidbit with working with Mike is that every now and then some French will just sneak out, and I have no idea what Mike's saying, but a little bit of French because, Mike, you do come from a Quebecois background. And sometimes in our artistic conversations, that interrogation of language appears. Quebecois playwrights work in a very different tradition than Anglo playwrights do. And so how does music and language play into your practice as a director?
I think there's something, and I did work predominantly in English in Quebec, so full context. But there's something inherently connected to flow because of the positioning of the French language, or I'm going to say French language as opposed to Quebecois in this particular case. Just the positionality within the mouth, or how phrases or thoughts tend to be longer than Anglophone thoughts or phrases. And so there is, it's interesting the difference between like Quebecois or French literature versus the spoken text or spoken word versus like, Anglophone spoken word or text. So the French language, like many of the older languages within a Western context, has an inherent musicality to it. And so that has informed a lot of my ear, and sometimes the way I speak can have a little bit of a debate as to like picking a language. But I think that has absolutely influenced how I see things, or how I experience theater, or how I read or can appreciate, again, a text like profoundly, because it is a musical score in and of itself. It's also, given me as a predominantly Anglophone artist, a little bit of a freedom to allow metaphor or image to take precedence over blatant, maybe more direct description or metaphor. Because again, within the French language, there's so much image, it's so much simile and within that, as opposed to direct harshness of the English language, or the more contained thought. And so that's how I envision theater. Like, that's how I see it. There is a natural languidity, or a purposefulness of tempo and timing. Period. End of thought. Yeah.
Thank you both. Really makes me think on how our languages and the music of our languages is so tied to our identity, so tied to our understanding of ourselves, our families, our belonging on any given land. So I wanted to veer this into the specific. Did my mic? Oh, hello. I wanted to veer the conversation as the last question before I open up for audience questions towards the specific British-isms of this play. There is a specific music of the language in its rhythm, and sometimes in the original text, references to the NHS, for example, and other like biscuits, other things that you would tie to British culture. So I wanted to ask, how did that collision of working with the British identity pan out in the room, in that rehearsal process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something we asked very early on is, again, what's at the center of the story, and wanting to go after clarity and really make this as immediate as possible to this city right here, right now. We leaned into, okay, let's continue exploring the text in a neutral Canadian accent. So that was the first decision we made, exploring what it meant to premiere in North America. And then dealing with the specific Britishisms, we played with, okay, so we keep it in a Canadian accent, but do we change some of those really specific references to Canadian equivalents? So we played with those for a bit, but then we found, you hit the nail on the head when you said, where the origin of the text is from has a very specific rhythm, has a very specific cadence and flow. So we found that actually the specific Canadianisms were interrupting the flow of the play, as it were. Yes, and so we made the decision to just let the text be as the text is, to allow our audience to be able to fully access what was on the page as the playwright had initially intended.
Right. Thank you, Germaine. And how about for you, Mike?
Yeah, I think of whenever I hear this question, I think of one word in particular, and I'm going to give it to you now, which is the word bog. You'll understand the context. Does anyone know what a bog is? Yeah, toilet. Like, it's not a spoiler for the whole play. No, not at all. Not at all. You'll understand the moment when it appears. Yeah, I remember I had the great fortune of chatting with Mumbi and meeting Debbie Tucker-Green virtually a couple of months before we started rehearsal, just to get a sense of, Debbie's origin story to the play and if there's anything that we should know. And the one thing that Debbie said, she's like, I don't remember why I wrote it. But like that was that time. It was like, I don't know. She's a BAFTA winner, an Olivier winner. She's like, she moved on to other things. Yeah. This was like 2017. But what she did say, and folks who do appreciate the work, she speaks and writes so specifically, again, to the community that she grew up in. Again, this is East London, predominantly Black ecology or community. And outside of the Britishisms, there's also the cultural specificity in which Debbie writes about that is not about geography. And so that's in the text as well. So that's what she said, and I was like, yeah, obviously you're so smart and articulate when she said that. The other thing that I really find fascinating is that she's writing for 5 Black people. It's a universal story, but she's writing 5 Black characters. And within a Canadian context, which I find, and I see 2 of our Garden Circle folks here, and we've talked about this before. If you want to be a part of it, check the pamphlets. Is that the 5 actors that you see on stage, especially within a Canadian context, come from the diaspora, they come from Caribbean communities, they come from the continent as well. And so there is no universal, in my opinion, there's no universal Canadian sound, right? And so the Britishisms, which is specifically about the words, actually feel very appropriate to the wide range of voices that make Black communities, or the Black voice. There's no singular homogenous Black voice. And those 5 actors actually can identify it really, really well. So it feels very natural. It just comes off the tongue. It's more about the specific references like bog or, grade level or something like that pop up. But the actual way it sounds, it feels very close to home. Like you'll know. Would you agree?
Yeah, really, I would really agree. And yeah, that's why we made the decision to lean away from any sort of accent or affectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really smart.
Thank you both. That is so insightful. And thank you for being so candid and also so vulnerable with your answers tonight in talking about Profoundly. I can't wait for you to see it and then to see you at the next Tarragon Talk or our Garden Circle to keep on talking about theater. But I wanted to open up now to see if you might have any questions for our esteemed panel. There's no pressure.
Are you curious? Is your interest piqued? Yeah? Do you know what you're getting yourself into? Let me ask that. No? Who's read absolutely nothing about the piece?
Fantastic.
Oh, great.
This is really
Complete
good.
surprise. And then show of hands, who has read a little bit of something?
Yeah.
Great. Well, I know yeah, absolutely the two of you have.
But also, I really like the video that was done with the actors. Seeing that after I saw the dress, I feel like things have changed.
Yes.
So, but that really struck me, and I sent it to, well, I talked to Joe and Monica, who couldn't be here tonight, and they can't, you know.
Yeah.
They're away. And Monica says, oh, I'm so sorry that I'm missing the play, because it really spoke to me, my own family experience of communication, and that's a whole other story.
You're already speaking like you're in the play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. One of the really lovely things that I appreciate again about this text and this title, it's in the title. It's the noun. In this case, it is the noun, but love is also the verb, right? And so this triptych that you're going to experience, it is three couples, and there may or may not be a connection that I will not tell you, but it's three universes that investigate the notion or the concept of love. And it's not just love in terms of romantic relationships, it's love, big L, in all of our relationships. And I think what the power of this piece is, and I'm so excited for you to experience it, is to open your heart and open your mind to the wide scope of what love actually means in your life. And we hope that you can give yourself a little bit of a hug and love yourself at the end of the day, but also just go along for the ride, because it's a trip.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Then without further ado, please join me in thanking our guests. Have a most wonderful evening. Enjoy the show and can't wait to see you next time. And next time we'll see you, it'll be 2026. So Happy New Year. Ooh. Take great care. See you at the next one.
Thank you.